Alright guys, what's up? It's Revan Metalhead here with our review for the Dark Horse RDA. I know it's been out for a while, it's probably got a few reviews out there, but we're going to actually offer you a different viewpoint from two different perspectives. Me personally, as a cloud chaser, I like this RDA. It gives me a lot of freedom to do what I want to do, but my counterpart doesn't really seem to like it too much.
Now, the word you were looking for is cohort. However, that thing right there is just it's not something that I'll take with me. And when we look at some of the details here, I'll be able to show you what makes it strong and what makes it weak in this moment.
Alright guys, so here's our close-up demonstration of the Dark Horse. We're going to point out a few things so you can kind of have a visual reference of the things that we're going to be talking about later on.
One of the first things that you might notice is that we currently have a build in here with, dirty cotton. It's to show that we definitely use this here, and I personally have one of my builds in here, a 3-wrap dual parallel sleeper, and that's how much space it takes up inside there. As you might be able to notice, it's a fairly large mod. It's a lot of space for something a little more exotic, a little less pedestrian.
One of the things I do like is that something that it does allow for are builds like that. The post holes on it are rather large. It is no issue at all to try to get a dual parallel coil in there. I've had a lot of RDAs that the post holes were so small that you could barely get a regular parallel in there. So me cloud chasing as much as I do, I like to have those dual parallels. And it really allows for a lot of freedom with the post holes being as big as they are, and you don't have to drill into them like I've seen done with a lot of other RDAs.
Well, me with a simpler build, you'll see that this little 24 gauge wire barely takes up any of the space that these post holes have. Like, it's just, you can barely see where the wire is itself. The whole large area is a disadvantage for me because I have to screw these things so tight just to get it to hold and have a good connection and not end up grounding out or what have you.
And that does lead to one of the problems that the Dark Horse does have, which is sometimes the post holes will actually spin themselves. It's a little bit trickier to get them to do, so I'm not going to be able to show you right now, but they will sometimes spin. They won't always be completely centered, and that does bring forth the problems if you are someone who likes to do sleeper coils of it maybe snapping the lead in the center post.
I can definitely tell you that on my builds it did snap the lead several times. It's a problem that I haven't had with any other mod of any type before, and I think that this issue is actually specific to the cloned version of the Dark Horse, the one that most people will end up buying because it's much more affordable and the benefits and negatives are minimal.
And another thing that I have actually noticed too is it does have a very shallow juice well, if you can see that. One of the problems that does lead to is the fact that this will leak a lot. I have had multiple problems with it leaking. From what I understand, it's a very common problem. So the shallow juice well is more of a negative from my perspective.
He says it's a negative. I say it's a deal breaker. These things spend more time in my pocket than anywhere else. So having something leak in my pocket, whether I'm climbing on the top of a vehicle or freaking walking down the hallway, is just not acceptable.
Alright, so I suppose we should get to the cap now. The cap I do enjoy too. It's big enough to allow room for big builds. It's got plenty of airflow to it with multiple different options. You just unscrew this right here and you can adjust your different airflow options. You've got a little space right there. You've got plenty of just completely open spaces. From what I understand too, you can take the ring completely off and flip it and get even more of a option to get different airflows. And I don't know if y'all can see this right now, but this goes back into what I was talking about it leaking, is I'm already having juice get on my hands just from loosening this up.
And this was supposed to be dry.
So it does have a lot of problem with leaking, but one of the benefits, once you screw this down, it does not move. It is locked in place. So you don't have to worry about your airflow getting really messed up.
I want to take that as one of the few benefits that even I can enjoy. One thing that I've seen with a lot of different mods and a lot of different types of products is when you want a very specific amount of airflow, you'd be surprised at just how much of a difference just a part of a millimeter makes when you're trying to adjust your airflow. So being able to lock your airflow, unscrew it a little bit, and have perfect freedom to get your very specific airflow is a big positive in my book.
And another thing that I like is the wide bore tip. The wide bore tip gives plenty of room for as much vapor as you need coming out whenever you need it. And as a cloud chaser, that is a big plus for me. I generally stick with wide bores on my RDAs, and the fact that this comes with it is a big plus for me.
When he says wide bore, he really means wide bore. When I try to vape on this thing, I get embarrassed to be trying to hitting this thing in front of my boys. It's like eating a banana or a hot dog and looking directly in your boy's eyes. When he says wide, take that as you will. It's a negative for me, but that's definitely noticeable. But let's get to why we started with this thing separated in the first place. This thing is perfectly flush. If we wanted to separate it now, we'd have to grab this very tightly and pull it like that. That's a big problem in my book, because that means that it either has to be mounted or you have to be somewhat patient if you don't have just a little bit of nail here or anything like that to get it apart.
Or you could just have some strength behind you.
Yeah, about that. So whatever the case is, this is a dark horse, and fully assembled, even with its flushness, I have here a Atlantis V1. Look at how large just a dripper is compared to a whole tank assembly, the little top guard, the air selector switch here, and the little mounting piece. This thing is very sizable, both inside and outside. If size matters, well, you'll be compensating with this.
See, I personally like how big it actually is, because it does allow the freedom for those more exotic builds and the more off-the-wall builds that someone might want to be doing. So I feel that it gives enough play to experiment with different kinds of things. So I don't necessarily see the size as a negative, but again, that's my opinion.
Guys, opinion time for this RDA, because we do have some different opinions on this. Because personally, I love this RDA. I would have to say that the advantages that it does have with the building space and the airflow options and the different things that you can do with it are a massive advantage over the shallow juice well and the few leaks that you will end up getting, because there are easy ways around that for me. So personally, I'd have to give it a 4 out of 5.
When you have to ask me, I'd end up giving it a 2 out of 5, because it's not just the leaking, the size, the post twisting, the issues that it has with thinner gauge wires, but it's also one other thing. Can I borrow that for a second? I don't know if you can hear that from there, but when you pull on it, you'll often get like this high whistling sound. It's obnoxious. It's like a Civic with nothing but a muffler screaming down the street. That's not a good look for you or anybody who does the same thing as you. And I give it a pass not just for efficacy, but for image.
Well, I honestly could not give a fuck less what you think about it, but I'm proud of my cloud.